Today, you will learn how Seth Meyers ruined his career. Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the latest stories. The interview began smoothly. Harry enthusiastically shared details about his project, discussing veterans struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder and how his own experience serving in Afghanistan shaped his mission. The audience listened attentively, and Seth interjected lighthearted jokes that drew laughter. But then, after a brief pause, Seth leaned closer to Harry, his eyes narrowing, his voice dropping to an almost mocking tone. He dropped the first bomb. "Harry, tell me, do you still consider yourself a prince, or are you more of a Netflix influencer on a paycheck now?" His words came out lightly, almost jokingly, but they carried a venom that stung the ears. The audience froze. Someone in the back rows let out a nervous chuckle, but most of the crowd fell silent, sensing the air in the studio thicken. Cameras zoomed in on Harry, their lenses humming as they captured every gesture. His smile stiffened, a flash of anger flickering in his eyes before he quickly masked it. Harry leaned back in his chair, took a deep breath, and responded with cold politeness. "I consider myself a man trying to make a difference, Seth. Titles or platforms are just tools. My work with veterans speaks for itself." The audience erupted in applause, but Seth didn't back down. His smile widened, almost sinister, and he pressed on, ignoring the mounting tension. "Okay, but, Netflix is cool, but it's not exactly Buckingham Palace, right?" he said, and the audience laughed again, but the laughter was nervous, uneven. Harry's jaw clenched, his fingers twitching slightly on the armrest. The camera caught the moment, and the operator seemed to realize the show was spiraling out of control. The tension in the studio became unbearable. The crew backstage exchanged anxious glances, and the director, through his headset, whispered something about changing the topic. But Seth seemed determined to push forward. He grabbed his note cards, glanced at them briefly, and delivered the second, even more provocative question. "Tell me honestly, Harry, what hurt more? Losing your title or losing the royal budget?" The audience gasped. Harry's smile vanished, his eyes darkened, and a dead silence fell over the studio. He leaned forward, his voice quiet but sharp as a blade. "Seth, I'm here to talk about veterans fighting for their lives every day. You want to talk about budgets? Let's talk about how we can help those who gave everything for their country." The audience exploded in applause, people rising from their seats to support Harry. But the tension reached a boiling point. Cameras buzzed, operators frantically switched between shots, and panic erupted in the control room. Directors whispered into headsets, urging Seth to stick to the script. But Seth, with a glint in his eyes, clearly had no intention of stopping. His fingers gripped his note cards, his smile hinting at another blow to come. At that moment, it was clear. This interview was no longer about Netflix or veterans. It was a war, and the climax was inevitable. Seth Meyers, sensing he was teetering on the edge but unwilling to lose control, leaned closer to his guest. His note cards trembled in his hands, and the smile that had clung to his face now seemed openly cynical, almost menacing. He glanced at the audience as if seeking their support, and delivered the third, most cutting question. "Harry, your grandfather fought in World War II and you're fighting tabloids on Instagram. Is this the third generation of decline, or am I counting wrong?" His voice dripped with biting sarcasm, his words hanging in the air like a lightning strike. The audience gasped. Someone in the back shouted, "Whoa!" but most of the crowd froze in stunned silence. Cameras zoomed in on Harry, their lenses humming, capturing every inch of his reaction. His face turned to stone, but his eyes burned with an intensity that seemed capable of setting the studio ablaze. In the control room, panic erupted. Directors whispered urgently into headsets, begging Seth to stop, while one producer muttered, "This is the end of the show." But Seth, caught up in his own game, seemed to believe the provocation would skyrocket ratings. Harry slowly rose from his chair. His movements were calm, but carried a force that made the audience hold their breath. Even Seth, who had maintained his signature smirk, flinched as the prince stood tall, his posture radiating royal dignity. Harry took a deep breath, and when he spoke, His voice was low and piercing, like steel cutting through silence. Seth, I came here to talk about people who sacrifice everything for others. About veterans who return home broken but keep fighting. About those society often ignores. But you seem to think my worth is defined by titles, money, or what tabloids write. He paused, turning to the audience, his gaze direct and fearless. My grandfather fought in World War II, yes. I served in Afghanistan, risking my life alongside thousands of others. But war isn't just tanks and bullets. It's a fight for dignity, for justice, for those who have no voice. You mock my Instagram, but I use every tool I have to give those people a chance to be heard. The audience erupted in applause, people rising to their feet, clapping louder and louder. Someone shouted, "Bravo!" But Harry wasn't done. He turned back to Seth, his eyes blazing with righteous anger. You want to talk about decline? Decline is when you, Seth, use your platform to belittle others for laughs or ratings. You think you can disrespect me, my work, my brothers in arms, because I left a title behind? I left a palace, but I didn't lose my dignity. You, Seth, are losing yours right now in front of all these people. The audience roared with applause, louder than ever. People stood, chanting Harry's name. Cameras buzzed, operators scrambling to capture every frame, while chaos reigned in the control room. Directors shouted into headsets, demanding an immediate cut to commercial. Seth sat stunned, his smile finally gone. He tried to interject a joke to defuse the situation. Okay, Harry, let's, get back to your project. But his voice trembled, drowned out by the thunderous applause. Harry didn't listen. He turned to the audience, his face calm but resolute. I'm not here to tolerate insults, he said, raising a hand to quiet the crowd. I'm here for the veterans, for those fighting every day. And I won't let their cause be overshadowed by cheap jokes or provocations. With that, he removed his microphone, dropped it on the desk with a quiet thud that echoed like a gunshot, and walked off the stage. The audience exploded, shouting, "Harry!" and applauding so fiercely the studio walls seemed to shake. Operators frantically tried to capture every moment, one accidentally panning to Seth, whose pale, dazed expression only underscored his defeat. The directors cut to commercial, but it was too late. The moment had gone viral. The audience continued to cheer, some shouting words of support, while the crew backstage stood in shock, realizing they'd just witnessed a career-defining moment. As soon as the show cut to commercial, social media exploded. Hashtags, #BarsauTeam, Harry and the Seth Exposed flooded X, with clips of Harry's speech racking up millions of views before the show even ended. Users posted, "Harry just destroyed Seth with one sentence. That's dignity." And Seth Meyers thought he could humiliate a prince and got schooled. Team Harry. The video of Harry dropping the mic and walking off stage went viral. His words about dignity and veterans quoted in posts, articles, and even evening news segments. Ratings for the Late Night with Seth Meyers plummeted. Viewers accused Seth of unprofessionalism, bullying, and trying to humiliate a guest for clout. In the days that followed, Seth posted an apology on X, calling his questions misjudged jokes and expressing respect for Harry's work. But the apology was seen as weak and belated. Several major show advertisers publicly announced they were reviewing contracts, and headlines like "Seth Meyers versus Prince Harry, How the Host Lost in 10 Minutes" dominated the press. Some critics even suggested the show might not recover from the blow. Meanwhile, Harry's popularity soared. His Netflix documentary gained unprecedented attention, and donations for veterans' causes surged thanks to the viral impact of his speech. On X, Harry posted a brief message. "Thank you for your support. Let's focus on those who truly need our attention, our veterans." The post garnered millions of likes and retweets, his words becoming a rallying cry for those advocating respect and justice. Harry emerged victorious, his dignity and commitment shining brighter than ever. His speech not only defended his reputation, but reminded the world of the importance of fighting for the voiceless. Seth, meanwhile, was left grappling with the fallout of his misstep, a cautionary tale of how one ill-judged provocation can cost a career. The late-night studio echoed with the reverberations of that evening, when a prince proved true strength lies not in titles or platforms but in principles and dignity.